There has to be some common sense.
Yes, sir. They have the car stopped at 10 at the ranch, Michael Byler.
We still don't know who pulled the trigger.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, a 27-year veteran of the NYPD. Folks, we've been following this Gilgo case since it occurred, since Rex Heuermann was arrested. And, of course, the past week, we had the arrest of Chief James Burke, who at one time was running this investigation. So there's all kinds of allegations. There's all kinds of conspiracy theories. And we're here tonight to try to put some reason to some of those and to give our law enforcement perspective to this. In Shannon Gilbert's disappearance in 2010 sparked the discovery of 11 bodies on and near Gilgo Beach on Long Island. After more than a decade passed with no arrest, 59-year-old Rex Heuermann was arrested on July 13th, 2023. He was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of second-degree murder in connection with the details. Heuermann has pleaded not guilty to all counts, and he was named as a prime suspect in a 4th murder investigation. And the 4 death investigations, of course, are known as the Gilgo 4, and that would be Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. Now, the case of Shannan Gilbert, for most of us, of course, it sounds suspicious. And things that made it even more suspicious were the ruling by a former New York City chief medical examiner, Michael Baden, because the autopsy that was conducted by the Suffolk County medical examiner ruled the death undetermined. And they were, because of the condition of the body, it was in a deep condition of decomposition and had been there for over a year. It was difficult to do certain tests on it. For example, there was no way they could do a test that could prove that she drowned. However, that was their hypothesis. However, then Dr. Baden comes in and says that the hyoid bone, a bone in the lower part of the neck, was broken. And he ruled it a homicide, death by asphyxia or strangulation. However, he didn't come up with a lot of facts and details as to why he came up with that ruling. So we're going to play a little bit later on some of the 911 call because, of course, it sounds very suspicious. And the fact that she came from New York City on a call, we all know she was a call girl, and she responded to that location. But there's a lot of witnesses that had the investigation been conducted thoroughly and in a timely fashion, I think we wouldn't be asking a lot of the questions that we're asking now. But of course, because in the past week or so, with the arrest of Chief James Burke, who also did 4 years in state prison for some other fugazi activity while he was the chief, people are coming up with all kinds of conspiracy theories. That's Chief Burke on the screen, and to the right was the individual, the perp that he beat up for stealing things out of his car. And that started the sort of what's the corruption of Chief James Burke, who again went to prison for 4 years for that. So we're going to take a look at that. And of course, is it suspicious, or does it give you a lot of faith that this man, Chief James Burke, was running this investigation during the times that he was arrested and went away for 4 years, and all of the other allegations and the new allegations against him, of course, a morals charge inside a park in Suffolk County, similar to what he was charged with 4 years ago, over in the same vein, sort of. With me tonight, I'm going to bring on the guests one at a time. We have an amazing show tonight. We have a guest that I'm so excited that we got on the show. This is actually his second time, but since then he's become a TV producer. He's a producer of the hit TV show New York Homicide that recreates homicides that occurred in New York City. And to tell you the truth, not to brag, but Phil and I have both been on the show. So it's a pleasure to have him on. First, let me introduce the co-host tonight. And with me straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. How you doing tonight, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy. I'm very excited about tonight's guests and to get with this show tonight. It sounds like we're going to have a good one.
Absolutely. And with us also is retired NYPD Sergeant, Professor, law degree, man of reason. He hears confessions after the show. Father Mike Geary. Mike, welcome to the show.
Billy, good to see you. You're killing me.
I don't know if people are calling you and say, do you really hear confessions? Because I'd like to tell you my sins. Anyway, with us tonight, we have retired NYPD Chief of Detectives. And as I said, now TV producer of the sort of hit show. I guess it's a hit show. We're on it. New York Homicide, which is broadcast on the Oxygen Network. Chief, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, guys. Thank you.
You know, Chief, I know that you bring a different perspective to this show than perhaps two lowly sergeants and one lowly detective that works at L&B Spumoni Gardens now. So,
easy with that.
But it's okay. You know, Chief, I know that you've been following this case, and so many people, of course, that watch real crime, true crime, they want to beat up on the Suffolk County Police, and I've been reluctant to do that. But one of the glaring things, of course, is the evidence, David Schaller, and that, of course, was the green Chevrolet Avalanche belonging to Rex Heuermann as he went to the house of Amber Costello in 2010. And for some reason, that evidence seemingly sat in the case folder, not acted upon. Your feelings, Chief?
So it's great to be with you all tonight. And I love talking about this case because I like talking about cops and crime and how they look at these things. So you look at this case and you see the big miss, the Avalanche. How did that happen? You know, this could have happened 13 years ago. It could have made this collar, or maybe possibly. I'm not saying you definitely would have. They had two boxes at the time. They had Massapequa Park and Manhattan. Clearly, the line there is the railroad. It goes straight to both. So Massapequa Park is the first place you got to look. Someone tells you he's seen a man in an Avalanche. It's not a Toyota or Honda. It's an Avalanche. It's a distinctive vehicle. It's a halfway between a pickup truck and a car. From what I understand, they ran it, and this is some inside info that I picked up along the way, as a truck and not a car, and not and as a commercial vehicle. And it never popped up on the lawman search. But that's only one avenue. So they should have ran it every different way. Vehicle, commercial, private car, whatever. It would have popped up right there in Massapequa Park. But they could have done other things as well. Now, you know as well as I do, we used to do the old way. We used to grid search for a car, as distinctive as that. Not only that, I would have had people standing at the train station every day and see if you can find this guy 6'5" and ID him and follow him home and maybe get it that way. There's a couple different ways to skin that cat. It didn't happen, and I don't understand why. This is nothing to take away for all the years they put in, but someone at some point has to explain that miss, and it probably come after the trial. So maybe we'll find out one day. But I'm happy for the Commissioner, Rodney Harrison, a very good friend of mine and a great man. And also there's some inside people there that I'm not going to mention. I'm not going to embarrass them, that work on that case were NYPD, and they work for me. And I will tell you, they were the best in the business. Best cops I ever had. I had one guy as a white shield. He was running a string of confidential informants and wires. And he was so talented. I'm so proud of him that he got this far. He came off our job as a highly decorated individual and went there to work for the Suffolk DA. And he pretty much ran the case at some point. And so hopefully when this thing is over, this trial is over, we can talk to him and find out what happened. Because it needs to go out to all law enforcement, these misses. Everybody makes mistakes. But something like this, with this kind of scrutiny, additionally, he was catching other cases, the main detective here as well. It wasn't a defined, all you got is this and run with it, you and your partner. It wasn't that. I understand resources, but he was catching other cases as well. So what's the investment by the Suffolk County Police Department in this? And that has to be talked to as well.
Absolutely. You know, Chief, one of the things I noticed that a lot of the other departments don't do, they have this secrecy thing. And instead of using the community and using the public to help you, for example, the belt with the HM or whatever it was, that took them 10 years, 11 years to put that out there. You know, the 911 calls from, from
Shannon
Shannon
Gilbert.
Gilbert. Why did it take so long for them to put that out there? I think that sort of is that secrecy thing really is a thing of the past. And now it's much more in vogue. Get the public to help us out. What do you think if they did this, and Phil, I'll address this to you, they did this search warrant on Rex Heuermann's house. If he has some trophies, for example, that's something you got to immediately put out to the community because someone may recognize something that he's holding on to. Phil.
Yeah, I got to agree with you, Billy, because we talk about it a lot of times that we will try to use the media to our advantage. Sometimes we want to block them out. We don't want too much information out there. But in a case like this, when they made the arrest, they had enough to lock him up. They locked him into 3 of the homicides. Whatever search, the results of that search or whatever was recovered, perhaps there were some items, perhaps jewelry or other items, maybe a cell phone. If they put that out into the press, perhaps there could be some maybe further evidence that would help the case, make it a little bit stronger. Or perhaps even if there's an item that we don't know who the victim is, now someone recognizes that item and says, hey, wait a second, that's so-and-so that was reported missing years back. The common denominator in this case is that these girls were escorts, and we know that a lot of times they might be wearing jewelry, and we know how serial killers work. So again, during the press conferences post the arrest, after the search of that location, Rodney Harris was quoted as saying that the search warrant was fruitful. So I believe they did recover some items, some things. So let's see what it, like the chief said, when it goes to trial, let's see what they did find.
Professor Mike, same sort of thing. What are your thoughts about these warrants? They haven't released what, if anything, fruitful that they recovered from these warrants, but in essence, I think that could be the key to finding out that other crimes Rex Heuermann may have committed.
Yeah, Billy, you're right. They have to release some of this information, get it out there so that people who are related, could be cousins, first family members of the missing girls, they could say, yeah, I know, I recognize that jewelry. I recognize, those glasses, whatever. Like there was the one female who's on her skin, she had the tattoo of the peaches. All of those little things that are very distinctive need to be put out there for the public to see. And it's a shame it hasn't been done. But, there's certain things you want, as Phil said, certain things you want to keep quiet. Maybe the manner of death, that sort of thing. And so that you don't get some crazy person coming in and trying to pretend that they're the killer and confessing and driving you crazy. And, you're going down rabbit holes with that. But there are times when it's needed. You got to have the publicity. And in this case, they should have had the publicity very early on. They underfunded, under-resourced the original investigation because they found the 4 bodies in fairly quickly. I mean, I could say, okay, the body from Miss Mack's body from, years earlier. But when you find 4 bodies in an area that's probably a couple hundred yards, not even in length, you have a serial killer. You can't underfund it. You can't, as the chief said, you cannot have, a homicide detective catching cases while he's got obviously what looks like a serial killer case. Shame on the Suffolk County Police Department. Shame on Burke that way. But the time to settle this is later on, not right now.
Absolutely. Chief, your thoughts about that? I mean, I was shocked in the Newsday interview when Rodney Harrison said, when I first came to Suffolk County Police, I interviewed the lieutenant, I interviewed the catching detective, and I was surprised to find out that he was the only one assigned to the case, and he was still catching other cases. For us, that's absurd.
It is, and he was dismissed from the case. When the task force started. So, and that was go back with fresh eyes was all that. Just getting back quickly to his house, they're going to have to talk to his wife or soon-to-be ex-wife, and they got to find her a travel schedule. They have to show her identification in the house, whose pieces of jewelry this, what's going on with this, explain this to me. If she cooperates, and I don't think she won't. So, but she's been brought into the case as well. Getting back to different people here, it took 8 months to find Shannan Gilbert, or 7 months. How did that happen? And I understand the catching may be the New York State troopers. They were brought in late. Suffolk County responded. There was a mishandle there. But why did it take so long to find her? I mean, she was down the beach a little bit, from what I understand, in a marsh area. But we have resources, all kinds of things you could have found that person with. So I was a little surprised at how long it took to find Shannan Gilbert. It's one of the sad things about it. This girl never had a chance in life.
Chief, she was actually found by the Oak Beach houses down there, Oak Beach Association. That's 5 to 6 miles from Gilgo. So we get a lot of information. Oh, that's the Gilgo Beach, but she was 5 to 6 miles away. And one thing about Shannan Gilbert, she was the catalyst that got this case going. When she went missing, that missing persons report is what got the searches of Ocean Parkway and Gilgo and that whole area going, because before that, they put basically no resources into this.
I tell you, I drive down there a lot. I'm a Long Island guy, and I know the area very well. In this wintertime, it is desolate there. There's nothing out there at all. And it's outside the commuters who use the Ocean Parkway to beat up the Southern State a little bit. That's all that's there. After that, there's nothing down there. So it's a ripe opportunity. And we've had these in the city. We've had these areas too where there's dump bodies. We know where they are. And when we find that, we make certain conclusions of how we find them. So that's also plays into this.
Absolutely. Billy, can I just make a quick comment about why I believe the body wasn't found so quickly? In the early part of this investigation, they did interview the escort. He was the guy Joe Brewer was I'm going to call him a John because he called the escort to his house. So he was interviewed. Mike Pack, who was the driver, and Barbara Brennan, who was a neighbor. I think there was a fourth person as well. And they believed that Pack took her away in the black SUV. That's why I think there wasn't an intensive search in the early stages of this. However, when she didn't appear and the family pushed it later on down the line, that's when the real push for the search began. And again, they were dealing with, the 22-minute 911 call. There was a lot of different things going on there. And I think the early stages of the investigation, they really believed that she had left the scene. That's what I think would have counted for the delay in finding her. And then the area, Chief, I'm sure you could tell us about it. It's very, very high brush there. And they say it's so thick, you could get disoriented a few feet in.
I don't know about disoriented, but yeah, you could. It's tough to find. It's tough to look for. But we, like cadaver dogs, things of that. You can run them through there. That was my issue with the whole thing. And it's just fate that took us so long for us to find it. And the family did push, by the way, to get things going. So that's another thing that's got started. It's a shame that it took that long.
I want to play a little bit of this is the Suffolk County homicide lieutenant. We're going to talk a little bit about the 911 call from the Shannan Gilbert thing. And I want to tie this into the fact that is there any possibility, and I don't think there is, that Rex Heuermann committed this murder or that Chief James Burke had any hands-on involvement in this?
Homicide section. This video was made to explain the circumstances surrounding the 3 911 calls made on the day Shannan Gilbert went missing. The full, unedited 911 calls are available, and I encourage people to listen to them in their entirety. Portions of the call taken out of context will sound sensational. During the early morning hours of May 1st, 2010, Shannan Gilbert, a Craigslist sex worker and resident of Jersey City, New Jersey, traveled from Manhattan to meet a client, Joseph Brewer, at his home at 8 The Fairway, Oak Beach, New York. Shannan was driven to Oak Beach from Manhattan by her driver, Michael Pack. Neither one was familiar with the area, neither one had been there before, and neither one had met Brewer before. Pack waited in the car while Shannan was inside with Brewer. Pack was her de facto security. At 4:51 a.m., while at Brewer's house, Shannan called 911. This call lasts for more than 21 minutes. At times, Shannan is speaking calmly, but slurring her words. At times, she is not responsive, and at times, she is screaming. During this call, Brewer and Pack are heard trying to get Shannan to leave the house. Shannan eventually does leave the house and runs to Gus Coletti's house, located at 17 The Fairway, which causes him to call 911 at 5:22 a.m.
State Police, Trooper Fry. State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Okay, where are you?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you, ma'am?
I don't know.
You're driving right now?
No, I'm inside the house.
I'm sorry?
I'm inside the house.
What house?
I don't know. Can you trace where I am?
I'm sorry?
Can you trace where I am?
No, I can't. What's your callback number you're calling from?
Huh?
What phone number are you calling from?
Somebody's after me. Please.
Are you in Suffolk County or Nassau County?
I'm in Long Island.
Where on Long Island are you?
No. 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 No, stop, no.
Where in Long Island are you? In Suffolk County? Nassau County?
Huh? Why? Why didn't you call me by my name? Why?
County, you on the line?
Stop. Please. Stop it, please. Please stop. Please. Can you shut the door?
No, time to go.
Please. Please. Please.
Go that way, please. Come on, let's go. Come on, roll that side. Come on, go outside. Come on, all of us. Come on, over outside. Come on.
No, please.
Come on. Please, come on.
Please.
Come on.
Why?
Just come out here. Come on. I'll go upstairs. I'll go upstairs. You leave. I'm just going upstairs. Look, I'm going to go upstairs. You leave. I'm going to go upstairs. Okay? You leave, please. Please, get your Mom, hold. All right. What's the matter? Are you okay?
What are you going to do? What are you going to do to me?
A bit strange there because Michael Pack is the limousine driver that drove her there from Manhattan, but yet it sounds like on this 911 call that she's terrified of him. And to me, that immediately screams of drugs or some kind of paranoia, because this is the guy who drove you out there. This is the guy you use as your driver to go on calls. Chief, your thoughts?
It's a little strange indeed that she becomes really paranoid. You just hit it on the head right there, Bill, and starts being accusatory to everybody. I think the John, if you want to call him that, or the client, wanted to get him her out of the house immediately, and he was getting packed to help him. So that was the issue there. They can't control this girl because then after this, she runs to two houses and bangs on those doors either. So she's clearly out of sorts. Don't know what kind of episode she's in, and then her mental background or mental state at that time seems like she's in an episode.
Absolutely. You know, and my thoughts are when conspiracy theorists point towards Rex Heuermann or Chief James Burke being involved in this, there's witnesses on the scene that would have said, oh, you know, do a couple of photo arrays. Well, these people on the scene, it would have been an easy investigation. I don't know how quickly the Suffolk County detectives got onto this case afterwards, but I would think you could eliminate if there's any suspicion that this was Rex Heuermann. Well, now, of course, his picture's all over the place, but back then, everyone's pointing the finger that Chief James Burke, he did everything. We think he's even a serial killer. I think it's easy to eliminate him from any suspicion in regards to this case. Mike.
Yeah, Billy, this isn't the type of case that Rex Heuermann is involved in. He's taking girls to a place that's his home that he controls completely. This isn't that home. This is somebody else's home. We got the guy's name. We got the name of Pack. And if, you know, just looking at whether or not this is a homicide or an unfortunate, you know, girl running into the woods and getting disoriented and drowning, this doesn't seem to be a type of thing where you would commit a homicide against this girl because there's witnesses. So I don't even think it's as a homicide. I got to agree with Chief Harrison that this is not doesn't look like a homicide at all. And Rex Heuermann, remember, Rex Heuermann is not very confrontational when it comes to being in the public eye. When they had the girl who was missing, who did the little joke on him with the
Costello.
Costello,
Amber
the Costello case.
Costello,
Thank you,
yeah.
the Amber Costello case. He immediately backed down when he's a foot taller than the other guy and ran out the door. So he's not the kind of guy that's going to be running down the street chasing some girl, that sort of thing. As unfortunate it is with this case, it doesn't look like it's a homicide at all. It doesn't look like Heuermann or anybody else is involved in it.
Absolutely. Phil?
Couple of quick points. Number one, what reason would the Suffolk County Police have to exclude this case from a serial killer case where they have 10 bodies, they have 3 identified and arrested, Heuermann 4, they're going to charge him possibly with the 4th. There's no reason for that. Number two, why would killers who are planning to kill this young girl allow her to get on a phone for 22 minutes and talk to 911? That's completely outrageous. Third point about the 911. If you go further into that tape, Billy, the 22-minute call, she went to the neighbor's house. There were periods of time where the 911 operator went silent, wasn't asking a question. She didn't engage her. I'm not trying to point fingers at anyone or try to put blame, but I think had she been a little bit more engaging with her, where are you? Describe the location. Is there an address on the house? When she runs out and she goes to the neighbor's house, put that person on the phone. She could have done a little bit more. Perhaps if the police had gotten there and gotten to the location while she was there, she probably never would have been found dead. The other thing that I wanted to talk about is Heuermann went to great lengths to protect his identity with burner phones and different things of that nature. When he contacted these girls, he set up appointments. Mike made the point when he had that little, they pulled that little scam on him. He backed right out. He left. He wound up meeting with her the next day. Perhaps he talked her into leaving her cell phone in her pocketbook at home, and then we know what happened to her. So again, I don't think Heuermann's involved. As far as Burke goes, to me, he's just a degenerate, not a pedophile, just a degenerate, and he's a pervert. When I first heard about him being arrested for beating up the guy that broke into his car, I said, listen, the guy went off the rails. He went a little bit too far. He's going to jail for it. But when you hear the other details of what could have come out of trial, he took a plea. He was much further deep involved in this real sick, psychotic, sexual stuff. And I don't think he's involved in this case or any of the murders. I really don't. Perhaps his leadership is what took this case away from maybe being solved quicker. But he just was completely off the rails. Like I said, a pervert, a degenerate. And
All right,
I don't
Chief,
think that...
I want to get to her cause of death. And this is Chief, I want you to address this because I know you know a lot about this. The Suffolk County Medical Examiner, his autopsy was inconclusive. He could not rule it a homicide. He could not rule a cause of death. But then the family hires New York City Chief Medical Examiner from the days of Lincoln to do a second autopsy. Your thoughts, Chief?
Well, listen, if you read all the material on Dr. Baden, he dances around the hyoid bone. We're all professionals here. We know the hyoid bone is fractured. That's a suffocation, and that's how people die when they get choked to death. It takes considerable pressure to do that. He kind of like dances around, and he says this: there is insufficient information to determine a definite cause of death, but the autopsy findings are consistent with homicidal strangulation. What does that mean? And he talks about the horns you just showed. They were dislodged. So it's really a dance more than anything else. And I don't know Dr. Baden, I don't know too much about him. But when you see these things, you say it's not snapped, it's not fractured, it was intact. Then someone says, this lawyer, and I don't remember his name, John Ray.
Johnny Ray.
Says there's a hole in the hyoid, which I've never heard before. And he can't describe how that happened. So this is kind of like a dance here. That doesn't make a lot of sense. There's lesser horn, greater horn, and there's the body of the hyoid, and the horns hold it in there. So he says they're dislodged. We don't know exactly if there's any wildlife issues here with this gal. We don't know. But the fact that he's not conclusive, it gives me pause to think he's really he's really just walking around this thing and not making a definite call.
But the one thing about this case is that it did serve as the catalyst for this big search of Ocean Parkway, which ultimately recovered what was later known to be the Gilgo 4. So her family and Shannan Gilbert, this absolutely did help the police in finding these other bodies. And of course, on the screen, these are the victims known as the Gilgo 4: Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Melissa Bartolome, Amberlynn Costello, and Megan Waterman. And so far, Rex Heuermann has been charged with 3 of those, and they're waiting to get enough evidence to get probable cause to charge the 4th one. And the commonality, of course, with all 4 is that they are all escorts, and they were all called utilizing those burner phones, and they were all dumped in the vicinity of Gilgo Beach. And that makes it, so patternable that, I think there's almost, I'm not going to say there's no doubt, because people don't like it when we say that, he's not innocent until proven guilty. So, but there is a lot of evidence against Rex Heuermann. Your thoughts, Chief?
Oh, there's a tremendous lot. Now, this is a lot of people, defense attorneys will call this, just and not enough, just my speculation. He did this and this. Here's the mistakes he made, and they all make mistakes. He carried his burner phones on the same belt he carried his regular phone. So that click, when they look at that thing, it comes right back to his regular phone as well. That's on. Big mistake that this guy made, among many. But there's the issue right there. They get his online things. They see that, see what kind of cat he is. He's looking at the really strange stuff online. They're building this case on him. That's going to be compelling evidence when you go down the line, when you have all these things against him. I'm confident he's going to be convicted. I'm confident he's the one who did all 4. Just by his actions and his actions thereafter. He lived in that Massapequa Park area. He was that guy on the train every day. You look at the other stuff, it's really insurmountable when you have all this evidence. And here's the thing with this scientific evidence and technology. Number 1, it's not biased. It's just technology. It's just telling you something. Number 2, there's no human error. It's accepted. DNA is accepted. Now, he's got some problems with the DNA. It's not mitochondrial, it's not nuclear, but I think they'll be able to talk through that and explain that the weather did that. So I think it's a very strong case. I think he's at least guilty of 4. I don't know about the others yet.
Absolutely. I think, though, that what a lot of people are worried about, and I frankly worry about it too, is that during the time where the Suffolk County Police had the information on the Chevy Avalanche, they had the information of this 6'6" ogre, he was described as, that went into Amberlynn Costello's house. And it sat in the case folder and it wasn't acted upon. And what the big tragedy will be is if they find murders that occurred during the time when they had that information and when they could have acted upon it and they did not. Phil.
Well, Bill, we know that the information was in the case folder. It sat there. It took a long time before it was uncovered. I think Rodney Harrison breathed new life into the case. Perhaps when he started that task force, we were lucky enough to get that. And again, you made the point. If we find that there are other murders that are attributable to Rex Heuermann in between the time from 2010, when this case started, to 2023, when he was arrested, that would be very sad and unfortunate. However, I do applaud the fact that he was fairly short time after the task force was started, that he was identified. They did a lot of research on him. They did a lot of investigation. They did following him. They wound up getting that DNA, and they made the arrest. So I have to give them the thumbs up on that. However, again, if there's other cases that are going to be connected to him, it would be very unfortunate if that information was sitting in that case folder and then it was never acted upon for all these years.
Carson C., thank you very much for the $10 super sticker. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, real crime stories. If you like true crime from a police perspective, then you're in the right place. And if you're not subscribed to us, go on our YouTube, hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, and ring that bell. If you want to support us financially, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. We also have a YouTube channel member with 5 different levels. You see the folks with the green font in the chat, and they're all part of our YouTube channel family. Mike, you're the same question I spoke to Phil about. Why don't you weigh in on that?
Yeah, you just hope that there's no revelation that there's some women who have been killed, after the revelation about the Chevy Avalanche, because there's so much time in between the revelation, the initial revelation, and when Chief Harrison got hold of the case in 2022, and within like 6 weeks or 8 weeks, like Phil pointed out, they really started zeroing in on this guy. That would be a terrible shame and a terrible miscarriage of justice for everybody. You just wonder, from the time that the initial investigation started, and then they found the 4 bodies, what level of commitment by the Suffolk County Police Department was made. You have one detective. They're taking cases on the side also. Was there a partner involved? Was there, did they have any sort of help from any other agencies, or were they just going on it alone? And that's the big shame, because, Chief Burke, it was under his direction, and therefore he has to bear the ultimate responsibility for whether or not this was a total screw up, which will be taken care of later. But you just hope right now, for everyone's sake, that this is the sum total of the bodies of the poor women that Rex Heuermann killed, and there's not others. And I think we might have to accept the fact that all of the bodies that they've uncovered, the other like 7 other bodies, that we may never know who killed them. There might never be a connection made because
Absolutely.
of time passing, and we might have to just live with that.
Chief Boyce, I just want to raise a question that a lot of people have raised to us. Was the lack of investigative, how would you say, aggressiveness, I would say maybe, is that because these were call girls, that these were sex workers? Was that a cultural thing in this department? I'm not saying I agree with that. I'm saying that's being brought up a lot. That's why.
I think who knows? Because I don't know what's in their heads, to be perfectly honest with you. This case was as big as they get, Bill. It was all over the country, probably international as well. I don't see how you could not assign a whole team of detectives to this thing, bring the FBI in, and then have them leave. That doesn't make any sense at all. The FBI gave them 2 boxes to work in. I wish I had that in these investigations. Going back to identifying him, Philly and Mike, across the country in these other places that he lived in, he was a choker. All right. So when you're choking, you're fighting, you can get DNA under a fingernail. You may be other cases that across the country you can get a match to. All right. So his DNA is going to go into CODIS. Now, they took abandonment DNA initially. That's to get probable cause. Once he's arrested, they'll take a buccal squad and they'll have a full exemplar they can send and put in CODIS, and other people can look at it. And therein lies the issue right now. However, not all these girls are found because he hides the bodies. And there's an issue there as well. He hides the bodies. And right now they're looking for a girl in South Carolina. They can't find her. He could be one of these people that's involved in her missing. So there's a lot of issues here. But going forward, when you find these skeletal remains, he's going to go, his first name, and it's going to pop in your head, is going to be Rex Heuermann.
Chief, Ray Tierney, the Suffolk County DA, said in a press conference that Rex Heuermann's DNA can't go into CODIS till he's convicted.
Totally convicted, yeah.
So what about the exemplar they took as per the warrant that the judge ordered? Does that not go into CODIS as a forensic exemplar?
That's a legal haggle between lawyers. If you have a specific case that fits this, those attorneys can petition for that. Whether that judge agrees to it, I don't know. They'll go post-conviction. So that's the big issue now. Once he gets convicted, if he gets convicted, I'll give him the presumption of innocence, of course. Then it goes to the CODIS, and others can line up their cases and look at it.
It gets very complicated with the legal issues in regards to DNA, because it's always changing. And then you have now investigative genetic genealogy that raises a whole other specter of DNA, the processing, building family trees, whether it's familial DNA, whether they're allowed to do this, whether they're allowed to do that. Certain databases that they're law enforcement friendly. People always say, 23andMe, law enforcement's not allowed to use that. And they fight subpoenas at some of these genetic genealogy databases. They fight subpoenas from law enforcement. So it's a huge hill to climb, but the technology is unbelievable, just incredible.
Of all the forensic disciplines, DNA is the most researched and the most accepted in court. So I don't see an issue going forward with this thing. They just have to get him in because not all those pieces. Remember, his wife's DNA was on Hares is one of the cases too, tying the house to that material that he used. Really interesting case with DNA. Again, it's the sum of all the evidence that's going to convict this guy if they find a jury to convict him.
That's what we always say. We always say connect the dots, and the dots will put all the evidence together. Let me play a little bit more of this 911 call, then we'll move on from Shannon Gilbert.
Hi. Huh? Well, I don't know. That it was transferred to me. Hi. You gonna tell me? It's running through, I think it's Suffolk County on the Suffolk County on why are you going to call Suffolk County? I'm in the middle of nowhere.
Let's go back to Manhattan, right? We're in Long Island. We're up near the water.
Please stop.
Me, Mike, brother, come on.
No, stop it, please. Hello? Hello? Please. What's the problem? What's the matter? What happened? Hello? Please, get me out of here, Lee. Hello? You're being sarcastic.
See, that to me right there when she said, please get me out of here, Mike, and she's addressing her limousine driver. But at other times, she sounds like she's terrified of the limousine driver. So I'm not, I just think there has to be some kind of paranoia, drug-induced paranoia. And, many people are saying, yeah, that's what it is. And other people, oh, no, she sounds perfectly lucid. She doesn't sound lucid to me. Phil.
No, absolutely not. I mean, she's flip-flopping. 1 minute she's very, very scared of him. Now she's saying, please get me out of here. And you heard the statement that he made. He goes, come on now, you're freaking me out. We're over here in Long Island. Let's go back to Manhattan. To me, I think it sounded like he was just trying to control somebody that was going through some type of a paranoia, perhaps alcohol and drug-induced. I don't know. But it sounded like he was just trying to get her out. And then earlier you heard Joe Brewer saying, I'm going upstairs now. Good night. Him and Mike say goodbye to one another. So again, it was something that maybe just sort of got a little bit out of control. He wanted them out of the house, and then she went into the weeds there looking for help and knocking on neighbors' doors. That's the way it appears to me.
About this, you were part of this all along.
I can manage it now.
Shannon then ran from Brewer's house at 8 the fairway to Gus Coletti's house at 17 the fairway, a distance of 0.2 of a mile.
Shannon.
Shannon interacts with Coletti. He invites her inside his home.
Shannon.
Somebody here? Huh?
Hello? Hello?
Don't get yourself hurt. Where are you going? Wait a minute. Where are you going? Where are you going?
She then runs from Coletti's home, prompting Coletti to call 911. After Coletti's call, Shannon then runs another 0.2 of a mile to another home at 43 the Bayou, prompting a third 911 call made at 5:30 a.m. by Barbara Brennan.
Suffolk Police 873 with location of emergency.
Yes, I live at Oak Beach in the association, There's a young girl about 14 years old running around here screaming, and there's some guy trying to follow her.
He's, I think, describing Michael Pack, who is the limousine driver. That's the only thing at this point that makes sense. And were those screams that we heard, that, you know, gut-wrenching screams, were those that she feared her own limousine driver? I'm not sure I'm getting this.
What's the address there?
I'm at 17 The Fairway.
All right. You have a description of the girl or the boy?
Pardon me?
You have a description of the girl or the boy?
The girl is about 14 years old, got blonde hair, very small. The boy, I can't tell. He was into like a Suburban.
What color?
Black.
Did you happen to get a plate number or any?
No, I didn't.
Okay, telephone number you're calling from?
Fort.
Are they still on the fairway?
They just went past the gatehouse where the entrance is.
And what's the name of the complex?
It's Oak Beach Association.
Okay.
Out at by Robert Moses.
All right. We got somebody over there.
I'll be watching.
Oh, okay.
Suffolk Police 875. What is the location of your emergency?
43 The Bayou. Some woman is knocking at my door.
What town are you in?
Oak Beach Association.
What's the nearest corner street now?
Ocean Parkway. She says she's in danger.
Do you know her or no?
No, I don't. I'm not letting her in.
She's banging on your door now?
Yes.
Did she say what kind of danger?
No.
Oh.
And we live in a gated community.
What's your name, ma'am?
Barbara Brennan.
What's there a name to that community?
Oak Beach Association.
Oak Beach Association.
And I have an elderly mother here.
All right, I'll get somebody right over there, okay?
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is drone footage and footage shot from the ground showing the marshland. It was taken at the same time of year and time of day as when Shannon went missing. These reeds can grow over 12 feet tall. They can disorient someone inside them, causing them to lose a sense of direction. One cannot tell where the highway is or where the bay is. The reeds and brush can become impenetrable in places. There's a trench running east and west through the marshland. This was created to allow mosquito control. It is believed that Shannon followed this trench. Personal belongings of hers were found just north of the trench. Shannon's remains were found north of the trench, about 158 feet south of Ocean Parkway, approximately 3/4 of a mile from where she was last seen. There has been information received during the course of this investigation that other people might be involved in this incident. They have all been investigated, and there is no reason to believe at this time that anyone else is involved in this tragic series of events. The police responded to Coletti and Brennan's 911 calls. Pack, Brewer, and Shannon were all gone. Gus Coletti provided a description of Pack's car, which was also gone. This created the possibility that Shannon had been driven out of the area, which caused a delay in the initial search for her. The police department has thoroughly investigated this case for more than a decade. The official cause of Shannon's death is undetermined. This official classification means there is insufficient or no evidence to determine or even to exclude an actual cause of death. The Gilbert family has hired a private pathologist to conduct an autopsy.
Well, we all discussed this. Now we can all understand why the public doesn't trust this finding. I give you Chief James Burke. I give you the fact that they didn't act upon certain evidence for 10 years. And you can understand why people are not believing this story. Chief Boyce.
I think what you just said, James Burke, he is going to throw a wrench in this trial. Because if you know what defense attorneys do, they give you an alternate theory to get their client off. Despite all this, and they're going to cause a smokescreen to say James Burke is the perpetrator and not Rex Heuermann. I think that's his biggest threat to this investigation. I don't think he had anything to do with this, James Burke, to be honest with you. But that's my opinion. It doesn't come up. There's no evidence, Bill. And that's the whole thing.
No, Chief, I agree. I'm just talking about the public and their lack of trust. You know how lack of trust in a police department taints every single thing you do, right? Yeah. You could have the greatest investigation and people don't trust you. Oh, you planted this, you did that, you did this. And that's what the public is believing in this investigation. Because look, it's not a sergeant, it's not a lieutenant, it's a chief that was allegedly running this investigation, if you could call it that, between 2012 and 2015. So I understand why no one's buying this story. Phil.
Well, Billy, if you play that tape a little further, they had a conferral with the FBI's behavioral analysis unit, and they said with the totality of the circumstances, review of the case, the 911 call, they had a psychiatrist review the 911 call for, to see what her state of mind was. Evidence, facts, and the death is not consistent with that of a violent death or death by a violent offender. And they also noted significant differences in the circumstances of the Gilgo cases. So based on that, they feel that this was accidental. I'm good with that, Billy. I looked at this thing from a lot of different ways. Is it possible that she was murdered by someone? Yes, of course it is, because it's undetermined. But with all this other stuff, when you take everything in the totality, I think that it's clear that she was maybe extremely paranoia, maybe on some type of hallucinogenic, and she didn't trust the guy Mike, who she was with. She didn't trust Brewer. She knocked on doors. Why did she walk away from Coletti? She left. He was telling her, "You all right?" He was trying to help her. She ran from him. The other woman doesn't open the door. I don't blame her for not opening the door. If someone knocks on your door at 5 o'clock in the morning, I'm not inclined to open the door either. So again, when you look at the totality of everything, is this case a homicide? Doesn't look like it. The other cases, I think, Chief, you made a great point that Burke, even though he's off the rails, he's some kind of a deviant that could really throw a wrench into this case, because he was at the helm at one point during the investigation. So, and I'm sure the defense attorneys are going to take advantage of that, what you just said, to try and fill out that alternate story.
Look, this is someone in the chat devoted to Mariah. Everyone is fine with letting her have no justice. It's so sad. We can't pull evidence out of thin air. We can't pull a homicide if there is none. We look at the evidence, and I would like to know the follow-up investigation that the Suffolk County detectives did post this case, post her going missing. I would like to know how thorough, or was there a lack of thoroughness to their investigation?
Billy, do you think that Rodney Harrison, and we all know Rodney Harrison, would be okay with that there wasn't a follow-up on this case? Would he get involved in it? Or are they going to just kick that case to the side and not get justice from her when they're getting justice for these other victims? I doubt that very, very highly. I am sure that they went over this. They re-interviewed. They probably, a lot of great investigators that the chief pointed out were involved in this case, and their opinions count for something. And they feel that this case was not part of a murder pattern, part of a serial killer pattern. And
no,
we're just going to have to live with that.
I'm just playing devil's advocate. And here is someone in the chat, Bella Finn. I believe that James Creep Burke was involved with a group of people involved in hiring Shannon that night, that she worked out that there were things happening around that she wasn't hired to do. We don't know that. Chief?
I'll tell you, I have cases like this you're well aware of, Bill, that no matter what you say, no matter what you do, with evidence you have, people listen to social media and don't make their opinions on that alone, which is not the truth. So I am embroiled in all these cases I am right now, that the same exact similar things, no matter what you say, no matter what evidence you present, they're going to think something else. And you can't get off of that. That's just the way things are in this internet world we're in. People see a certain set of facts. They don't go beyond the first paragraph, and they make their decisions on that first couple of sentences. And that's just the way it is right now.
Absolutely. Professor Mike, I want to hear from you, because you're nodding out over there.
Oh, I'm just waiting to hear confessions. No, you guys are right, because I was looking in the chat as you were playing the 911 tape. I'm looking in the chat, reading the chat, and I've seen this on many shows. And just as you said, Chief, the same thing. People are actually putting things out there as fact when they're not. And if somebody would actually take a look at what we saw and what we just listened to, and the timeline, they'd probably feel a lot different. But people have their minds made up, and it's all about justice for her. And we all want justice for her, but justice might be, that we find out the fact that she actually wasn't a homicide victim. Justice doesn't mean that every time there's a mysterious death that, we have to find the killer, because in this case, it doesn't look like there's a killer. Chief Harrison knows absolutely what he's doing. He's gone over this with a fine-tooth comb. And so therefore, there's a whole other set of facts out there, and alternative facts and even just alternative theories that aren't even based on fact, then that sadly is going to, as you said, Chief, it's going to be give rise to a defense attorney looking for an alternate theory at the case. Throw James Burke name out there as much as you can. Talk about what he did. Talk about what his peccadillos were, and connect it to this case and connect it to all the other cases. And pretty soon you can have people thinking that Chief Burke is the Gilgo killer. And then that's really sad, because it just takes, logic and twists it into a pretzel.
Absolutely. Let me play a little bit of this, little Rodney Harrison.
Friday, Shannon's sister couldn't bring herself to listen. But Cherie Gilbert said today she isn't buying the police conclusion her sister's death was accidental.
It doesn't matter if people think that she's a victim of the Long Island serial killer or not. Something happened to her that night.
Shannan Gilbert went missing after visiting a client's home in Oak Beach. The search for her led to the discovery of 9 other human remains, the so-called Gilgo murder victims.
You stop it! Oh, stop it, please! You stop it, please! What are you going to do to me?
The night Shannan Gilbert went missing, her sister believes she may have been drugged and later died. The family lawyer insists she was strangled.
Shannan Gilbert was murdered. The evidence of that fact is overwhelming, and the police department have covered that up.
I'm Detective Lieutenant Kevin Byra.
The Gilbert family wants Suffolk's chief homicide investigator to step aside and for the state attorney general to appoint an independent investigator to look at the Gilbert case.
I just feel like they dropped the ball from the very beginning. They didn't allow the FBI to come in, and I just think that we definitely need somebody to come in independently and review this case.
The police department's only response today was a statement saying if anyone has information to further the investigation, they should come forward.
To me, it's disgusting, the whole thing.
Once again today, the Gilbert family asserted the belief that a Suffolk Police Department surgeon, a retired surgeon who lived in Oak Beach, played a role in Shannon's death. The Suffolk Police Department again ruled out his involvement on Friday when I asked them about it. We're live in Yaphank.
So there's a lot of other moving parts that we're unaware of. And the way you get rid of those moving parts is to do an outstanding follow-up investigation. I don't know if that was done in this case. And ultimately, social media or even this show isn't going to convince people that, like someone just asked in the chat, what was the cause of death? According to the Suffolk County Chief Medical Examiner, it was undetermined. So,
copy.
Right. So, although, again, Michael Baden, the former New York City Chief Medical Examiner, threw a little curveball in there by saying that it was a death by asphyxia, which really there was not, he's disagreeing with the Suffolk County Medical. And again, people out there could say, oh, the Suffolk County Medical Examiner is corrupt too. They were in on this, and then you get one big conspiracy theory.
Billy, they have to take into account this body was found after almost 18 months. So it was very severely decomposed. And I think that there's some bones in the neck were missing. So perhaps there was an animal interaction of some sort. So determined at this point. But when you look at all the other interviews that were done with the people that were involved in the last minutes of her life, the 22-minute phone call, when you look at everything totally, I guess you can come to the conclusion that you feel it's not a homicide, however, possibly accidental. And again, the Suffolk County Police, when they did that video, they left the door open. If someone has information that can further this investigation, please come forward. And I'm sure that they would, take the information and run with it.
Well, Chief, I just wanted to say one thing also. The conclusion or the hypothesis that she drowned, they could not scientifically prove that.
Again, they can't at that late state of decomp. So you really, the particular hemorrhaging, you can't see any of these things at that point because you're past that when you recover the remains of this young lady. But you have to say it's undetermined, and that's where it's going to end. I think Rodney Harrison was putting an end to this thing and saying this is it and this is what we have. It doesn't look like she was a part of any sexual attack at all or being choked out from what I can see. Again, Dr. Baden was a little shady with what he was saying about the hyoid bone, because that's clearly it was. And then Mr. Ray, I don't know what he's talking about, to be honest with There's nothing clear about it. It was depressed, which might have been depressed, of course, but there's no evidence of it. And you can't say it's consistent with a homicide strangulation.
No, 100%. Phil, just
Joe Murray, attorney at law. Now, listen, guys, if you have found yourself in some type of a legal jam and you need some legal counsel in the New York area, Joe Murray is your man. He's not only an experienced criminal defense attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. And Joe was on the boxing team. So Joe might be able to deliver that knockout punch on your case. If you want to get a hold of Joe, his website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you can email Joe at jmurray-law.com. Joe is a big supporter of police off-the-cuff real crime stories, and we think he's a terrific criminal defense attorney.
absolutely. You know, Chief, I want to move on now, and I wanted to address the Shannan Gilbert thing, but let's move on to the 7 other victims that right now we don't have a connection, at least a scientific connection, physical evidence connection, or any other evidence that's pointing to Rex Heuermann, other than the fact that they were escorts. That's probably all we're looking at right now. Your thoughts?
I'm really concerned about who the toddler girl was, and how old was she, and then she's directly related to Peaches, whose remains were found in both Hempstead Lake Park, was really far away, Long Island standards, and out there as well. So that's where I think we should be looking at right now. Familial testing is the way to go. We've seen this happening. This case in Bitroff, that he was arrested for 2 other escorts that he murdered. They got his brother's DNA and saw the comparisons. Then got his DNA, and that's how they got him. And now he's doing 50 to life. His brother had taken collars as well. So this is how we do it. It's not intrusive. It's inarguable. If you get nuclear DNA on these things, you're 1 in like 3 trillion. There's not that many people on the earth. So it's really an identifier going forward. And that's what we have to do. Everything we should be doing right now is talking about DNA. Fingerprints, of course, anything else you can find. But this toddler, and they're all bad, trust me, but we should bring her some justice. And that's where my focus would be right now.
You know, Chief, the other thing is, and we've mentioned it too, being, of course, former police members of the service, what kind of resources need to be assigned to this case post-arrest of Rex Heuermann? And I know the answer to that. If this was NYPD, they'd keep this task force till the cows came home. But I don't know if they're going to look to do that in Suffolk County. Your thoughts?
Well, look at the big cases. Look what they did out in Idaho State, right? They didn't stop. Once they made the arrest, they kept going and opened up a treasure trove of information about what he was doing. All right, where did Rex Heuermann buy this camouflage that's using duck blinds? That's a little specific, I think. Did he put a credit card on it? Things of that nature. How far can they go back? Nobody does data crunching better than the FBI. I've used it before in big cases. They've always come through. So this is where they're going right now. It doesn't stop with the arrest. In fact, if you really have this kind of case, you want to build on it. You want a mountain of evidence to go forward. So it's really lights out. So I think that's what they're doing right now. That's why I want them to talk to with his wife, see where his travel habits were and when they were. Where did he go? How long did he stay there? When did he come back? Where were you? Did he stay alone? All these questions have to be asked. And you can do a lot through credit cards and things like that. But at the post-arrest now is the in thing now. It slams the door on these cases. And that's what I think they're doing right now. That DNA, wherever they recovered it, and those things are important. And what he said to people along the way. You see the sheriff out there is asking everybody in jail who was arrested for any kind of escort or whatever they were doing. They asked him if he knew this guy. So the case is not going to stop, nor it should. It should go forward and build that case up if you can.
You know, Chief, I'm glad you brought that up, because early on in the investigation, when it seemed every single person involved in this case was giving a press conference, I was a little uncomfortable with that. You know, at first, the talking head was Ray Tierney, and who was the district attorney. That doesn't happen in New York City. At least, Morgenthau or whoever was the DA may give one press conference, and that was the last time you're ever going to see them. But it seemed that Ray Tierney couldn't get enough screen time. And then, of course, the person who we thought should have been the talking head on this was Rodney Harrison, and we were happy to see him. And then I saw Toulon, the sheriff, Errol Toulon. And at first I was like, this is weird, but you know something? It's effective, because he was inside the prison making sure that these escorts, these sex workers, were being interviewed, and all the information, how many women went on a date, I hate to use that expression, but with Rex Heuermann that survived it. Mike, your thoughts?
Yeah, Billy, this is part, we talked about this earlier. You know, the arrest isn't the beginning of the end. It's just the end of the beginning. And the most data that you can collect, as the chief said, you got to have you got to do as close as you can having a slam dunk on this. And the DNA, the familial DNA, all this is circumstantial evidence of guilt. It's fabulous, but you keep going. As the chief said, the credit card, how far back can you go with those credit card records? You know, that's really important. As the duck blind canvas is fabulous because that is singular. You always hear about people getting wrapped in a blanket or wrapped in a sheet or a piece of a rug or something like that. But to actually talk about something specific as duck blind canvas is terrific. And he may have a lot of shotguns, I'm thinking, in his basement. And he may have been at one point something of a duck hunter. There used to be a really huge firearms warehouse out there. They used to call it a warehouse, Edelman's, and people out in the island always used to get shotguns from them. So they're not in business anymore, I don't think, but that's the kind of thing that it's going to be needed, all that follow-up to make this a slam dunk. And it's not going to end for a long time, nor should it. And the problem is we do have some of these other people, Karen Vertaga, Valerie Mack, and that unidentified child. You keep it going for them. Whether or not you can ever connect it to Rex Heuermann, you keep it going for them as much as you possibly can. Get the IDs, get as much information as you can, and try to contact whatever family members of these victims you can, and let them know that you've at least identified that child, you know, that sort of thing. Give them some sort of closure, some sort of justice. Justice may not be that they're going to make an arrest. Justice may be that at least right now, because of the decomposition, all we can say is we can identify the victim and we return their remains to their family.
Absolutely. Question from the chat. Roger Still, thank you for the $5 super sticker, as well. Schmitty, thank you for the $5 super sticker. Gut feeling from the panel. Rex guilty of other killings. Phil.
I'm going to have to say I feel that it'd be very odd for this guy to have killed so many people in a short period of time and then stopped 13 years. So I think there's a good chance. I think he's guilty of the 3 that he's charged with, perhaps the 4th as well. The other cases, I think they're going to be strongly looked at. He could be responsible for them as well. And I think there is a good possibility that he killed others in between that period of time.
Chief Boyce.
I think that because of his online searches after the case, that he followed the case for so long, also the weird pornography, he was looking at torture pornography, things like that, suggests that he didn't stop. And so you have to look at that really hard because he had different properties in different states. And I believe the case became so big that he stopped, in that area. Doesn't mean he stopped putting them in other areas either. So there's a lot of things we have to look at. Not saying he did commit other murders, but there's a probability that he might have been kept going. This is a monster right here. There's no question about it. Rodney was 100% right with this.
Professor Mike.
I agree with Bill and the chief. Absolutely. This would be really shocking if these are just the 4 that he's accused of killing that he did. I think it's way more likely than not that there were others earlier and that there were others after.
Rodney Harrison said something very interesting in one of his interviews also regarding why they chose to pull the trigger and make the arrest when they did. And there was 2 major reasons. And one was the integrity of the case. Because look, you're writing 300 or more subpoenas. One of these agencies that you're subpoenaing the records could tip off the person that you're trying to get the information from. So they were concerned with that. Part 2, which you suggested, Chief, was that he was still using those burner phones and contacting sex workers. And so they were afraid that he was going to continue doing what he was doing. So tough call, but I think we probably all agree that it was the right call. Chief, have you ever had to make a call like that before?
I have. Well, you have to cut the danger to the public. And plus you have to talk to a DA about that. And sometimes it's quite a haggle. that we have to do this now because public safety is. And Bill, you've been in the game. You understand that you have to arrest somebody. You have probable cause. Even you want to make the case better, but he's going to kill again. It's just a matter of time until you stop him, until you put him in, incarcerate him. So that's the big deal here, is protecting the public, no matter where the public is. I think the big question is here: did they take their eyes off because these were escorts? I hope that's not the case. I really do. I think more of law enforcement than that. I hope that's they just lost their sight, and we'll find out as the case ends, because I think that's when things are going to oil that up. Once he goes to trial and there's a verdict on that, then we'll see this picked up, the missteps or the mistakes, or just didn't have enough people to do the case. That also could be it.
I would like to see, Chief, if and when he gets convicted, that at that point, like a lot of serial killers, he'll come clean and start confessing to others that he may have committed, because he's doing life without parole upon conviction. So perhaps he can make his life a little easier in state prison, and maybe at that point he'll cooperate and we could get closure for some of these families, and perhaps find victims that we yet to even know about.
That's why we have cold case squads. I agree with you 100%. Just you pick up the pieces on these cases that are not charged. I have 2 cases where I know they did it, but they haven't been charged, and I still pester the DA and pester the homicide squads who have it to bring that in. And we're close on the Bronx. I don't want to spook the case, but we're close on making that arrest in the Bronx. That happened in, I think it's 2016. So you don't stop, you keep going. Cold case guys know you have to go up and talk to someone. You get that rapport going, and next thing you know, hopefully he'll give up more. And they do all the time, Bill. You're exactly right.
100%. You know what's amazing to me, Chief, even the time I've been off the job, is the technology. Even tracking these burner phones. I'm sure the technology is 100% better than it was when I was on the job 12 years ago. Of course, investigative genetic genealogy, just totally incredible. The mitochondrial DNA, all the techniques and the technology that they have now is it's good news for human beings and for people that are law-abiding citizens, that law enforcement has these tools that they're going to catch the bad guy. And I have to just mention the Rachel Marin case just very recently. The mother of 5 who's walking inside a park in Maryland, and some savage attacks her, murders, attempted rape, and they match his DNA to a forensic DNA in Los Angeles that occurred in March, but they don't have his name. They have his DNA, but they don't know who the perp is. I mean, tremendous that they made that match, and they had some video. That guy has to be taken off the street sooner than later, immediately. Phil.
Yeah, Billy, I'm glad you brought that case up, because now we have 2 different, we have a homicide and we have an assault where it is the same DNA. We don't have them identified. Hopefully they'll be able to maybe put it into the databases to do the familiar DNA and perhaps come up with a relative and close in on him. With regard to this case, I think the chief talked about it earlier. Once he's convicted and they can get his DNA into CODIS, perhaps that might open the door to some of the other cases that we think he may be involved in. And again, with some of these people, perhaps they were never reported missing. Sometimes call girls don't have much family. They just go missing. Only friends know of them, never reported them missing. So again, there could be other cases around very close to us within a couple of different states maybe that could be, attached to Rex Heuermann once that DNA goes into the CODIS system. I'm really hoping and praying that they could get that done sooner rather than later. And if there is a case that parallels this case, perhaps with a subpoena, they could get the DNA that we have from him and compare it and maybe tie him into those other cases.
Absolutely. Chief, I wanted to, you said earlier on, you wanted to talk a little bit more about the dismemberment cases. Did you cover as much with that, or do you want to get into it a little bit more?
We did. I've had many cases, too many cases like that. And what the thing is that you have to look at the cuts. That's important. And there's disarticulation versus dismemberment. There's different things. I had many cases like that in Brooklyn. People come from the Bronx into Brooklyn, stay in the murdered. We had one case, tattoos play a big role. We found a torso in Jamaica Bay, ran the tat, came up to a domestic violence case. It's a great story, the 7-5 squad, I love them. They were able to find, we'll go right to the house where she lived, and they saw the perps walking out, male and female, with her stuff, going south. Great case. So it does happen. It's done purposely to throw the police off. You'll see tattoos being mutilated, fingers being taken off. It's a dirty business. But then you know he's trying to throw you off, or she's trying to throw you off the case when they do that. But it has to be looked at. And also you have wildlife. We talked about it before. Or you get people put in the ocean, where that could happen as well. They pop up later and they don't have the body parts you know they would have when they went in. So these things are important. It's unusual, but it does happen. And it takes a really particular sick, twisted body, mind to do it. And that's how to look at these things.
100%. And you know something, we use the term partnership in law enforcement. And it really is so true that we work as partners, because these criminals certainly do, you know. And when bringing up the tattoos, I remember the best tattoo database in all of law enforcement was Rikers Island. You know, they had these databases of tattoos, and that's what could solve a case. And, you know, even things that young cops do, teaching cops, oh, make sure you let the perp make phone calls, because that's what we're going to use to investigate them down the road. Make sure when they say scars, marks, and tattoo, you put that on the online booking sheet. All of these are investigative things that I know you folks out there listening, you don't think of this, but it's so important to law enforcement and so important to the investigation of these cases. Guys, we've been on for about an hour and 16, so I'm going to give everyone their final thoughts. But before I do that, Chief, I just want to thank you so much. You brought so much to the table with your expertise. And we're not trying to brand you up so we can get on New York Homicide again. But
well, Philly's one every year. He's a double time, and each time you get better. And you were great the first time. Don't get me wrong.
Thank you.
Just want to do that again one time. I feel like I want to get him. Everybody called me the next day. They loved you. They loved you. You jumped out on the bad guy. Everybody loved that. You know. So thank you both. Thank you all. And Mike, very Churchillian. What you said. It's not the end. It's the beginning of the end. That's
Thank
right.
you.
Joe. That's really good.
That's why he's a professor. You know, he gets a professor.
He's heads above all of us. But thank you so much. I watched the show. I think you'll like it. New York Homicide. It's all about detectives and how they figure things out. You know, without a chief in the room either. So it's really important. If you watch that case, it's really interesting. And we're New Yorkers. We talk like New Yorkers, right, Phil?
Oh yeah.
It's not.
We use words like fugazi. What about it? You know, we say stuff like that.
I'm writing that into the next script, Bill. I'm writing that.
I rein it in when I'm doing this and when I was on New York Homicide, but it still comes through.
It comes right through.
Phil, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts are this. Listen, we got to hope and pray that there's going to be justice for these victims. The chief pointed out that toddler, the child of Peaches. I'm going to mention the names: Amber Costello, Megan Waterman, Melissa Barthelemy, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who he'll probably be charged with a case. And then the other victims, and hopefully there are no other victims that we don't know of. If there is, let's hope for justice with them. This is really just an amazing case. It's so great to be plugged into it. I think the panel tonight, Chief, thank you again for coming on. It's really an honor and a pleasure to have you with your knowledge or expertise. Mike, maybe after the show you can listen to a couple of my sins. But all kidding aside, this is really something to be plugged into. I'm looking forward to what's going to happen going forward, specifically the trial. And we're on it. We will jump on it the minute that there are some developments. Absolutely.
Professor Mike, final thoughts.
Final thoughts is for the people who are listening to your podcast and or avid viewers. Please try to dispense with all of and ignore a lot of the crazy stuff that gets passed off as facts when the people who are putting this stuff out there, they're engaging in misinformation campaigns, either intentionally or unintentionally, to try to bolster themselves. We don't do that here. You guys don't do that. I would never want to do that either. We go strictly by what we know as police officers and detectives, first responders, investigators, and that sort of thing. So I just ask everybody to please look at these cases the way we look at them, and you'll feel a lot differently about them, and you won't be misguided by people who are charlatans, who are putting stuff out there as content creators, and they're just throwing people off of actually what happened and creating other alternative universes that are like just made up stuff.
Wow, bless me, Father, for I've sinned.
Perfectly said, Mike. Perfectly said.
Thank you. Very, very well done. Folks, thank you so much for listening tonight. On behalf of myself, Bill Cannon, Phil Grimaldi, Professor Mike Geary, and great guest tonight, retired NYPD Chief of Detectives, Robert Boyce. Have a great night and God bless.
Stay safe.
this ain't enough.